We were just starting to talk about the agenda. Andy, you said you had, not the agenda, the minutes. You were saying you had some comments on April?
Yeah, very minor. On page 7, the second to last paragraph, and this is talking about the property with the pond. It said Robert Petto stated that he's leaning towards this area here by the circle in the middle of the driveway. There were that big, it said 30-foot beach. I think it should have been 30-inch diameter beach.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Right, it's 30 foot. And the other thing is just on page 7, first paragraph, it's not, it begins on, actually page 8, the paragraph begins on 7. But if you go to the third line on page 8, it says wall set on the edge of the water.
Okay.
I think it's just a typo, but otherwise I thought everything looked great.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't in attendance at that meeting, so I wouldn't be able to vote, but I believe 4 is sufficient to vote for minutes. Is that correct? So does anybody else have any comments on April? Can I have a motion to accept April's minutes?
So moved.
I'll
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. May, I was there. I had no problem with the minutes. Well written. Anybody have any comments? All right, if not, can I have a motion to accept May?
I'll make a motion.
And then there's a second from Jan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the May minutes are approved. On the agenda, White, Cheryl mentioned that they said they are not going to come in tonight, so I don't know if there's any need to discuss that. We all had that site visit. They seem pretty amenable to our suggestions, the 2 options, and we'll see what they come back with. Agreed? Koos on Justin's Way. Do we have reps from them? I know we kind of left it that we were going to try to give them permission to cut the grass on the road, and that was about as far as we were going to go, if I recall correctly. At least that was the tentative discussion on site.
Yeah, Mark, this is Max. I spoke with Steve Marino today, and he's not going to be able to attend the meeting tonight. But basically, beyond the cutting grass, what we were talking about is potentially having them make sure and confirm that they did not need to be or did not need to be in front of the planning board before they come to the conservation board for permits. So I Greg, and we came to the conclusion that they should probably file for a pre-application meeting. And I told Steve that today. So Steve is going to reach out to the town, the building department to schedule a pre-app meeting to just ensure that no other boards are going to be involved in what he's requesting. And then we'll go from there. So if we can just add this item and keep it on the agenda for next month, I think that that's what he would prefer and the applicant would prefer. And then they're going to reach out to the building department to try to settle some of these additional questions on other board involvement.
Okay. Ralph, I see you're there. Do you have anything you want to add to that? I'll take that as a negatory. All right. Shall we move on to Raymond Yi?
I have Noel. I just moved him over.
Noel, did you want to, there we go, unmute.
Yeah, hi.
Hi there.
Okay. Oh, do you see me or no?
We have an icon. It looks like a page.
Oh, here.
There you are.
Now we see you.
Sir.
Yes, submit this kind of French drain to collect the water and connect to the existing culvert under the street. Do you see these plans?
Yes.
Okay, so I submitted this last week. The main thing is the dot line is the yard French drain to collect the hills water, to collect the water into the driveway. At the driveway, we're gonna dig about 1 inch by 1 feet by 1 feet, and with the metal grating on the top to collect the water. And on the beginning of the driveway, where the C and D area, there is an existing culvert under those Winston Lane. So we like to just connect them. So prevent the icy and wet road on the Winston Lane.
Right. We did, Max and I visited the site. Jan, I believe you were there too. So I think this reflects what our recommendations were at the time, not to disturb the pond, not to do anything with the pond at the top, just to try to catch
Yes,
the runoff and go out into that culvert.
yes.
So for our part, do we need, I apologize, Noel, you're a registered architect or an engineer?
Yes, I'm an engineer.
Okay, so this plan, do we need a stamp on this plan, guys? Or is this just so low level that this is acceptable?
I wasn't at the site. I was the one that suggested originally that maybe something simple could be done, and that's what it sounds like. But I didn't get the packet tonight. Did we have this electronically that it could be just put up on the screen that I could see it for a moment?
Okay, sure.
That would be great if you could share your screen. I would just be curious to see it.
And did
I
a
wasn't
package
able to
go
go to
out,
the
Sharr?
site visit, but I think I passed by your house a few days later, and I believe I
And-
was looking at the right thing.
If it would help, Andy, I could probably email it to you in about 2 seconds. Would that
That's
be
fine
easier?
too. Yeah, that's whatever.
Yes, Bob, a packet did go out. Did you not receive a packet?
Not this week, no.
It should have been last week.
Yeah, I don't think last week either, no. Yeah. We do have a lot of trouble with our mail sometimes, so yeah.
Andy was saying too. I can start delivering.
No, you don't have to do that, but maybe
I'd be
just next
happy.
time when you send it out, just send me an email
Okay.
and then I'll keep a lookout for it and I'll let you know if I don't get it. But
Actually, it would be great just to send the email to the whole board when the packages
Yeah,
are
sure.
mailed. That's a good safety check.
That show up for you, Andy?
Let's see.
I did not include the letter, which is explaining. I gave you the 2 pages that show the plan.
Did you send it to the town email or my personal?
Yes, your Philipstown email.
I do not see it yet.
speed of light.
Okay, now I see it. Let's see.
Just an overview of what we saw at the site once you're looking at that plan.
Yep, I'm looking at it. Go ahead.
Directly behind the house, that's a deck, which is sort of at and even slightly above grade. Just maybe, it was maybe 10 or 15 feet from the deck, about out towards the back, and you start to go up a cliff. I mean, it's a rock, craggy cliff with little ledges. You couldn't climb straight up it, and the water is running down that hill, that cliff, and coming out at various points. It seems like it's subsurface and surface. And then coming around to the right side of that, like, again, looking at the picture like we're looking at it, around to the right where the point on the A is pointing, going up that way, the cliff goes all the way across the back of the property. The water is running. There's like a flat area, probably 40 feet vertically above the house, about 100 feet behind it. And then behind that, there's a very steep hillside that goes up, you know, like South Mountain Pass, kind of rocky, like just 100 feet of rock. All this water is running down into that flat area up above. It's collecting, and it seems to be just perking down into the ground, but in the rocks, and it's just coming out through this entire face behind the house. So the thought was to just try to get along the base of the cliff with that, some sort of a small drain, catch it, direct it down to the bigger drain, the one with the grill on top of it. And then that one is going to carry just along the side of the house and tie into the existing culvert. It's really, this is going to be a difficult one to actually do. I mean, I don't know how we're going to actually, whoever does the job is going to actually get these things
In the ground,
in
right?
the ground.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there. But there's a lot of water coming off this hill.
You know, it seems to make sense to me.
And I think,
On my drawing, if you see there's an E,
yes,
yeah, there are existing culvert. The pictures I already sent it on January. It's about, you know, the cross Winston Lane is about 18-inch, really big one, big culvert.
right.
So
mean, I
if
think-
we collect them, so going through the underground will be no problem.
Right. I think we would be giving permission or giving a permit to the point where you exit the property. And from that point on, it's the highway department's purview, I
Yes.
believe. So, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about it, Max? I don't personally think there's a need, as long as there's some oversight by, you know, somebody, you or Greg, during the process. You know, it's gonna be a lot of soil disturbance, and the water running down is gonna cause turbidity, and it's going to run down into that culvert, and the culvert goes into the lake. So some precautions have to be taken while it's being done.
Well, I think there should be a construction narrative added to the plan.
It
Maybe a
definitely-
timing thing as well, in terms of when there's, obviously you don't want to do it right after a huge rain. Is this, maybe it should be observed for a while, or is there some indication as to when it's drier, this particular flow? You know, interesting that we could have the same problem here as with, you know, Cloudbank.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the weather has totally changed. Think about the rain today. But I would think normal you would do something like this in August, which is about our driest time.
Mm-hmm.
Could we, I mean, I was not able to make the other visits, but I mean, that's not very far from me. So, Noel, if you could and Max, if you could kind of coordinate another site visit, and whoever else didn't get to go. I mean, it sounds complicated not having seen the plans or the site. I would just like to maybe see it, especially since it's not that far away from me. I can easily do it. So.
Sure. Makes sense, Bob. Max, if you, I mean, I don't have a need to go back. Certainly, if you want to go by yourself, Bob, that's certainly fine. Also, you know,
I could do that too, but you know, it would be good if maybe at least somebody representing the party could be there, just so I can at least understand what they're doing. Because
yes,
I'm a little confused. I'm probably out of the loop a bit, but.
Yep. All right, so
Let me
I
know
think
that I'll
that-
be there.
I mean, this was brought to us initially because there was an issue with the highway department, and you know, when there were periods of high flow, especially in the early spring, the road would flood and get iced over. So I think beyond us giving final approvals, we'll have to have the town highway department sign off on the final plan, and make sure they're comfortable with directing that water into the existing culvert.
mhm.
You know, like it's shown. So yeah, I'd be fine helping the schedule. I don't necessarily need to see the property again. But I will help coordinate that for you, Bob, if you need that.
Max,
Okay, thank you.
can I make a suggestion? You think it makes sense to try to bring someone from the highway department to that meeting?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they're the ones that have received the water, right? So we should include them.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I think, Max, if that gets set up, why don't you keep me in the loop? I might want to attend just for the fun of it.
Okay.
Well, likewise, I'd just say, um, I appreciate very much, Mr. M, what you have proposed. I think you have, through no fault of your own, you have a terribly difficult problem. There really is no good answer to it. And it looks to me as if you've tried in good faith to respond to what everybody said at the site visit. So, assuming everybody continues to be okay with it and Bob can get out and the highway department signs off, hopefully we have a solution that will work for you and the town, which
Okay.
which is what we always try to do. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, I think that is it for the agenda. Max, is there any new stuff we need to talk about?
Nothing new, but I will be meeting with Jose Lejano and some new representatives he has working with him off Oxyoke on Thursday regarding, basically picking up where we left off on that project and figuring out how to remediate the situation that he kind of created for himself. That's really the biggest thing. The other newer item is that the application that we, I don't know if we officially denied it, but the application on Lake Celeste Road regarding the renovation to the house on that property, I think Betsy Haddad, they requested a meeting with me on Thursday, basically to just reiterate that they are no longer in the wetlands buffer. They've decided to redesign that project, and I believe they've moved all the renovations outside of the 100-foot setback. So I'm going to be meeting with them as well on Thursday. But those are the bigger two items right now.
All right, cool. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you think I was jumping past Cloudbank. Did you all see the letter from Manitoga?
Yeah.
Yep.
In support. So, okay, I'm not sure. Beth, are you going to present?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman. We have, since your last meeting in May, done what we think is more investigation into the pond. And I submitted a letter dated May 21st, summarizing our review of the sediments. Mark Ambler from Pristine Waters and I took about 25 cores throughout what I'm going to call the eastern lobe of the pond. Bless you. And we were able to determine that the clay that we thought was an isolated pocket in the western lobe of the pond appears to be all around the edge of the pond to a distance of 5 or so feet, in some cases a little more, from the shoreline. And that led us to the conclusion that this clay apparently was used in an attempt to seal the edges of this pond when it was constructed in the early 1900s. The clay was very different in composition from the majority of the sediments in the center of the pond, in the rest of the basin, which are highly organic, very light and fibrous, really, sediments from decomposing plant matter in the remainder of the pond. And as one goes further south in that eastern lobe of the pond, there are significant buildup of leaves on top of this organic sediment that have been washed in from the tributary streams that feed that eastern lobe. And there are two streams which do that. So having sampled all around the edge. We are confident that there's not clay in the center of the basin. It was used in an apparent attempt to make sure that during periods of low flow, water didn't leak out around the edges of this pond. And having found that, we modified our proposed action plan to use the existing emergency outflow of the pond, which was installed several years ago to enable the owners to lower the level of the pond if an intense storm event was to occur, to prevent damage to the dam from water pressure. And we propose to draw the water level down as far as we can using that emergency overflow. And if necessary, we can install an additional pump to help move water out, clean water out of the pond prior to restarting dredging. We also propose to install 2 additional turbidity curtains within the pond. Turbidity curtains essentially act as aquatic silt fence. And the idea would be to isolate the eastern lobe of the pond, what we're calling work area B, from the rest of the pond, and to start to remove the organic sediment, staying away from the edges, at least 20 feet away from the edges, remove the organic sediments a foot or so, in most cases, sometimes only 6 inches, sometimes a foot and a half from the center of the basin. In addition, the return pipe would be moved so that it returns the water from the dewatering bags to that eastern lobe, I'm sorry, to work area B. And we would put a silt sock on the end of that discharge pipe, which would both help to filter the water and also to slow it down as it returns to the pond. Before any work is started, we would clean the accumulated fine sediment that has built up in the dewatering basin, take that out, take it off site and get rid of it so that it is not resuspended when the dewatering bags are used. We also propose, and this is part of my submission that I made today, we also propose to use the 3 unused dewatering bags. So far, we've used 2 out of 5. We would leave those 2 to continue to dry while the dredge material was pumped into the 3 remaining bags, which do not have the superfine particles in them. The idea here is to remove the organic sediments which have built up in the pond. We have no record of the pond having been dredged before, and the organic sediments accumulate and produce an anaerobic situation on the bottom of the pond, which releases nutrients back into the water column. Those nutrients then allow algal growth and aquatic vegetation growth, which have been a increasing nuisance and phenomenon in the pond in the 10 years that the roses have owned the pond. What I submitted today was an attempt. The chair had been kind enough to forward to us some questions from the Conservation Board, and what I submitted today were our answers to those questions. And most importantly, I think the issue of the benefits that are associated with finishing the dredging of the pond, I'd just like to touch on those briefly. If we were to stop now, we have removed the sediment from behind the dam, which was the structural concern of the engineers that have been monitoring the pond. But the roses would also like to remove the organic sediment that is contributing to the nutrient loading in their pond. It's causing algal blooms. It's causing a proliferation of aquatic vegetation, and the nutrients are then being passed downstream to other offsite neighbors' ponds, particularly Manitoga, where it is again causing algal blooms and problems in their pond. The removal of that sediment basically removes the source of the nutrients that are feeding the aquatic vegetation. And by removing those nutrients, we reduce the potential for that aquatic vegetation, the algae particularly, to cause problems off-site and ultimately in the Hudson. A question was raised in terms of the holding capacity for Work Zone B. Work Zone B comprises approximately 40% of the pond volume, and as such gives us adequate area to work while we are protecting the dam area, if you will, by the introduction of additional turbidity curtains. So respectfully, we would request that we be allowed to continue the restoration work on the pond, continue it now during the summer, early summer, when, with the exception of the last few days, temperatures are relatively low, and we're not in danger of harming the aquatic life that is in the pond. And again, in mid-May, when Mark and I were out there doing the sediment sampling, there was abundant evidence of small fish, amphibians, newts, turtles, all sorts of life in the pond. So we would like to get this done and let the pond rebound for the remainder of the summer and refill as we move toward fall, so that it can get back to a stable situation without further disturbance. When we were out there in August of 2019, I was somewhat alarmed to see that the temperature of the water in the majority of the pond was well over 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is entirely too warm and too stagnant. It was not going over the outlet at that point to promote a healthy pond environment. Mark Ambler is with me tonight. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought you were finished. But so you mentioned that it's the source of the nutrients. What makes you say that the Roses Ponds is the source of the nutrients? I mean, wouldn't it also be coming from upstream, or is there a specific source from the Roses Pond that we should be concerned about?
No, thank you for asking that question. The Roses Pond has a watershed that is almost entirely comprised of undeveloped woodland. And we did an analysis of that, and I'm confident that the nutrients that are in the pond have been accumulating for the better part of 100 years from natural sources, leaves and aquatic vegetation that breaks down and accumulates over the decades in this pond. The problem is the pond is now approximately 120 years old. And again, it is a natural eutrophication process where sediments accumulate and the pond gets shallower. This is a case where the pond is now shallow enough to support fairly prolific aquatic vegetation, particularly in that eastern lobe. And that aquatic vegetation is filling the pond in at a faster and faster rate. So it's not a case where we have extensive lawn or any human-derived source of nutrients. These are natural nutrients that build up in a man-made pond over time.
Okay. Yeah, it just wasn't clear because you said it was the source. So I was like, okay, well, why is it?
Right. I appreciate that question because I clearly hadn't explained that, but it's one of those situations where, having walked around this pond numerous times, I don't see any ponds like this, I'll be honest, unless I'm in a state park or a similar situation. this is a pond that is surrounded by undeveloped land. And so the sediments that we're seeing are not mineral sediments, as you would see if a lot of erosion had happened in the watershed. These are primarily organic sediments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Max, do you have any, you were, I think, important in this.
Really, I think, I wanted to make sure the board was given a good description of essentially how the water quality was going to be protected and preserved inside, or, before the dam in the pond itself, and then also and how the water quality would be protected downstream. So, I don't know if the board has any other concerns regarding that, in the proposal that they laid forth in terms of continuing the project. Any other ecological information that could be, gone into greater depth, in regards to what was outlined, what was submitted today, in terms of finishing the project versus not. So that was really, the major components in my mind were ensuring water quality protection if continuation was going to occur, and what measures they have in place to ensure or give us assurances as the town from a liability standpoint that would be of 100% certainty. And then also, in terms of the board's purview, what the benefit of continuing from an ecological or limnological standpoint would be. So if you feel like that those questions have been answered, then I would defer to you all on how you want us to proceed.
I have one question for Beth. You were talking about removing cattails and some phragmites from the edge, and I wouldn't consider cattails an invasive. What type of restoration to the edges of the pond are you planning to do?
In those areas, we, as I think I stated in my letter, we actually removed that material, particularly the phragmites, early on when they were doing the initial dredging. And those areas are beginning to regrow with natural aquatic bulrushes and things like that. So I'm not going to say that we've won with the phragmites. I'd never say that. I have yet to win with phragmites entirely, but we are intending to let the natural vegetation, which was there, it was a component of that shoreline vegetation, but it was being overtaken by phragmites on the left side of the beach area. There's a huge multiflora rose and barberry shrub complex. And the cattails that were there, I agree, they are native species. They are not necessarily invasive, but had we not been dredging the pond right in front of them, I think they would have continued to creep out and march out into the middle of the pond, toward the middle of the pond.
All right, I think that's a fair explanation. I just wonder whether the board should be requiring some type of ongoing minor restoration and monitoring of natural plantings for a few years.
And I can tell you that the Roses have a full-time botanist on staff, and she and I have talked about monitoring those plants and continuing to, I like to say, annoy them. Just annoy them. Keep cutting them back. Phragmites eventually will, as I say, I never think I've won with Phragmites, but it eventually gets tired and is less aggressive. So I think that is a promise that the Roses can make and will make happily. Not, Jonathan is nodding, because really those are the only invasives around the entire pond. And I pointed them out early on, and they were very happy to have them addressed as part of the restoration.
All right, thank you.
I just have one question. so is there a way that, to meet Max's, kind of goal of limiting the turbidity that goes downstream? Could we have a turbidity monitor online, like a real-time turbidity measurement? I mean, some type of flow-through device or something like that for the water that's released into the stream?
We certainly, let me just explain a little bit more about the water that we're going to release. The water that we're going to release is from right by the dam. And if there is any indication in work zone B or anywhere else in the pond that there is a turbidity issue, that valve will be closed immediately. So rather than trying to monitor it and have some electronic or instrumental monitoring, we're talking about having this work watched daily and as it's going on, and getting down there, we will get down there and shut that pump off and shut that valve off just as quickly as we see any indication that there could be turbidity in the water being released.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of like a control system, although that would be cool. No, I was thinking of more like just a continuous monitoring of it, so we have a baseline, you kind of see where I mean, this is what I do for a living, process, automation and monitoring. So I'm just thinking that this is a perfect example of some type of continuous monitoring that would be, really good for a baseline, and you could see kind of where, there was breakthroughs and things like that. I mean, a visual measurement, like standing on the shore looking at the water floor going over, you might not even see it, but it's just an idea. I mean, I'm not going to insist on it. Obviously, it's not technology that's normally used, then it's not normally used, but it just seems like a perfect example of a tool that we could, we certainly have today that could be used.
Indeed, we do. And just understand there's a certain amount of turbidity, if you will, that is associated with the dredging process. If you're churning up those organic sediments, some of that solid material does end up in the water column, but that's what the turbidity curtains are for. We currently, we had 2 turbidity curtains when we hit the clay. We have now a proposal to have 3 turbidity curtains between the work area and the outlet. So we will certainly be monitoring it daily, hourly, as we proceed, and we can make the assertion that if we see anything that is close to turbid water near the dam, everything will be shut down, and we will have the water level below the outlet so that no water will be going over the dam.
Right, but do you have like a number? Like, what is the cutoff? See, like I'm a numbers guy from an attribute standpoint like that. So, like, what is that critical number where you would turn it off? So this would give you that at between 2 and 3 curtains, you would be able to see the difference. So I'm just saying, from a case study standpoint and from what Max is trying to achieve to make sure that there's no downstream release, this is a perfect example of where we could do maybe a better job with, better technologies. So.
We have a turbidity meter, and we can certainly take measurements now because things have completely settled, and make sure that as things start up, we have some numbers that we can look at. And again, the Roses have no interest or intention to release turbid water. So we will guarantee that we will figure out what the baseline is and do our best to keep it at or near the baseline numbers for suspended solids. Whether those solids, we are confident that those solids will be organic in nature, but if anything else is encountered, I can guarantee you things will be shut down immediately. And I know you're a numbers guy, but I'm a biologist, and sometimes numbers are hard.
Engineer, so.
I understand. I have engineers as children, and we have some interesting conversations.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Beth. So the net of that is that you're going to add some kind of a meter or testing with this meter before you start and it'll be ongoing. Is there any way that we can get feedback on that? Like
Sure,
from Max
sure.
or an independent, just someone who can be there, just kind of report back to us how it's going on a
Sure,
basis.
absolutely.
Max,
Absolutely.
yeah, I know you have a lot on your plate right now, so I don't mean to put that on you. If there's another way we can get that information without forcing Max into more work, let me know.
No,
there-
we will submit the information to Max and to Cheryl for distribution to you. That's fine.
It's just Beth providing a baseline and then regular monitoring, right? Or regular testing.
Correct.
For my part, I am both pleased and comforted by the increased level of diligence that I'm hearing about and what's been happening, and Beth's answers were, I thought, very fulsome to our questions. So I think that we're in a place where I think the Roses understand the seriousness of this, and we've gotten to a place where the level of diligence is at a place where we can be comfortable. Max, I have a question for you though. Do we have, just refresh me on this, do we have an escrow account for this? Should something horrible happen? This is like the safety valve. Do we have an escrow on this account, on this project? Should there need to be some sort of a catastrophic repair? And I know I'm being worst case scenario person right now.
Yeah, we do. I mean, obviously, mostly it's intended to pay for any, extracurricular time for, town employees. It's not
Right.
necessarily intended compensating the town for, some sort of cleanup or something like that. So yeah, in short, yes. But looking at all this, I think, I would reiterate the sentiments that you just spoke about, MJ, but I would also want, to go through that memo. And, if the conservation board had any other concerns, just to ensure if there were other protection measures that be put in place, that, we talk about that now so that we're not dragging this process along. So, in the past, the dredging projects that we've permitted have all included a drawdown period, and operation and basically a working state when there is a low flow condition, in August or, later into earlier fall. And then we've, suggested the use or demanded the use of aeration systems and, to, basically create a stable environment for any living aquatic organisms within the remaining water, that would be left after the drawdown occurs so that the dredging can take place and the system from a faunal perspective can remain sustainable. A lot of those things I think need to be talked about. I don't want it to be overbearing, but at the same time, I think, from what I've seen in terms of the filter socks and things like that, there's still some question as to whether or not they'll work correctly. And I'm also curious as to why a lot of this didn't happen previously in terms of site monitoring. And how it got to that point initially. So I just want to make sure that the board is fully satisfied with the descriptions that they provided in the response letter today.
And if I could address a couple of those things. The reason that this wasn't anticipated, and I think I can honestly say I never expected that in a pond built in the early 1900s that we would have had a significant amount of clay in the basin of the pond. It's not something that geomorphically should be there. So it was something that was added as a part of the construction, I assume, of this pond. And to be honest, when Mark and I began to do the sediment sampling in mid-May, I never expected to find more clay along the edges of the pond. But in fact, we went across and did a transect and encountered clay on the far shore. And we began to go back and forth. And every time we got near the edge, we began to encounter some sort of clay in the sediments that we were pulling up, which is what led us to the conclusion that clay must have been used as an attempt to seal the edges of this pond. Knowing that, we then came back out from the shore incrementally to look at the sediments and see if we found that same evidence of clay, and we did not. It stopped, in my opinion, abruptly and consistently around the edge of the pond. So having that information allows us to avoid getting into a situation where we suspend those superfine clay particles or silt particles in the water column. That's not something we want to do ever. And knowing that that material is there allows us the ability to avoid it. And if we, for some unknown reason, aren't able to avoid it completely, we have cut off we have the ability to cut off the outflow from the pond, which we had not done originally, wanting to preserve the downstream hydrology and habitat in the stream corridor between this pond and Manitoga's pond. But we can cut it off, allow the material to settle. The second thing is when I first saw the cloudy water, I was worried that the time required for that material to settle could be weeks or even months. In fact, it was about 10 days for that material to settle out of the water and clear the water column. So that's good news. The abundant aquatic life that we saw when we were there on the 17th was more good news. I think we've figured out what the problem is, and I think we've figured out an efficient and straightforward way of addressing the potential issue of discharge of turbid water. We're not going to do that again.
I'd like just to add one more thing, which is that we have actually, using this siphon system, drawn the water to about 6 inches below the lip, and it has not filled back up when there are rains. So we do actually have a containment system that is operating now, and the ability to control, to provide stream flow or cut it off as needed. And so we do request permission to resume the operation. And one of the important things that I want to underscore that Beth said is that while the water is cool, is the best time to contain it. Because of the shallowness, you get a lot, the water warms up a lot more in August. And so August actually, it'd be better to get all this stuff out before August, and that will allow for the pond to be healthier when the August time comes, because it'll have a deeper depth of water and the nutrients will have been removed. So we respectfully request the permission actually to get the work done now.
Beth, can I ask a question?
Please.
It's maybe naive, but is it possible, if the point is to isolate the dredging and eliminate the possibility of it going over, at the same time allowing clean water to continue to flow, is it possible to short circuit and draw clean water from before the pond, or at a point where it comes into the pond, and let that just flow directly over, or be the source of the water that's going to continue to feed the stream downstream?
It is possible. We have not explored that alternative because I don't have any data on how consistent those tributary streams are in terms of their flow. I know that in August of 2019, none of the three streams were flowing at all. And I suspect that given the relatively dry early summer we've had, the streams aren't flowing at any appreciable rate now. The other contributing source of water to this pond is groundwater and groundwater springs. And there's no way to take a groundwater spring and pump that over the
Right.
dam, as much as we might like to do that. So I don't think we can count on an alternate source of water other than drawing water out of the pond that is clean, or as clean as it can be.
Right, I understand. Well, I mean, I believe I understand the plan. Adding the third turbidity curtain makes sense. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in this area by any means. My inclination is to accept what you've told us. I'm concerned that we may not be able to ask the questions that Max really is sort of indicating we should be asking. So I'm having to take your expertise as my gospel. So that I do.
Well, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I have spent 34 years consulting to both municipalities and to private sector clients. And when somebody asked me early on in my career how I could do that, my answer was, I have the same set of eyes and the same brain that goes into trying to problem solve any situation I come up with. So to the best of my ability, to the best of Mark Hamler's ability, we are trying to find a solution to an unexpected problem that allows this project to go forward in a safe and effective manner.
So we are in agreement that you're going to do the monitoring that
Yes.
Bob suggested,
Yes,
and you're going to be in touch with Max, so let's say to report in the morning that you're starting, so he knows it's happening. Maybe
yes.
midday to let him know what the progress looks like, and then at the end of the day. That's great. Max, is that a happy thing?
Max is going to be sorry he asked me to be in such constant contact with him.
You can actually CC me on all those, so
I
it
will
doesn't
do that.
necessarily have to go through Cheryl. And I can put it out to everybody if there is something that needs to be addressed immediately.
I will be happy to do that.
The reality of the situation is that I really shouldn't be notified with any change, based on what you've outlined.
Yeah.
So
It should all be good news.
Yeah.
You know, what
so I'm not,
sorry.
I guess where I understand the goal. I guess the other points that I would want to lay out here are, you've identified this band of clay and in the pond. And so I was hoping that basically we could go through step by step. And I think a lot of that has been talked about how we're going to be, protecting downstream water flow and in pond water. But, have you, what are the issues? Like, where is that band? I know you took transects, but or do we have an in-depth understanding of where you're going to be dredging, and where your limits are, beyond that transect line?
I believe we do. I believe we do.
Can that be marked physically so that there's an errant worker doesn't wander into the clay?
I'm watching my colleague, Mark Hamler, who is the one who directs the dredging operation. And Mark was also the one, I will say, in the dry suit, in the water. I was sitting in the boat. I was very happy. He was the one trying to crawl along the bottom and take these cores. I think Mark has a very good understanding of where we found the clay, and he will make sure that the operator of the dredge every day knows where to stay away from and what to look out for should a pocket of clay be encountered. We have a large dewatering area. I think you saw that in one of the pictures that I submitted this evening. We have a large dewatering area, and we have the ability to simply turn the dredge off, stop the dredging, and contain anything that we didn't mean to get in the dredge before it gets back into the pond.
I make a comment? Something was bothering me, and now after listening to everybody, I know what it is. And this is my thought, maybe nobody agrees with me. I do think a civil engineer with specialty in dams at this point should be overseeing this project as well. Because we've already had a minor catastrophic problem. I just, in terms of liability for the town, this is my feeling. I think that an engineer needs to be overseeing this as well. We've had mistakes already.
So, Andy, I'd like to address that. So we do have a civil engineer that inspects the dam, and that's actually somebody who recommended the initial removal of sediments. But the rest of the operation has zero to do with civil engineering. It's a biological effort. It's not a civil engineering effort. I happen to be profession in the civil work world and building world. There's really zero. We have a civil engineer who oversees the dam. We can call him in, but he really doesn't have a role in this. And the second thing is about liability to the town. I've heard that mentioned several times now. The negative, so my wife and I are deep conservationists, and we've put conservation easements on our land, and I used to be on the board of NRDC. I mean, I can go on and on. I'm very committed to protecting the environment. And so the liability is should more sediment flow into the stream below us. There's no catastrophic thing that would happen. There's that thing, which is not a good thing, that happened. We never want it to happen again. And that's why we've created a belts and suspenders system, including, most importantly, the ability to just turn the water off to make sure that doesn't happen. But that's not a civil engineering issue. It's a biological issue. But if you want to talk to our engineer too, we can somehow include him in this, but he really has no role.
I believe that as part of the initial application to the board, we submitted a copy of at least a portion of the engineer's report on the dam, which has been consistent over the time that the Roses have owned this dam, suggesting that all sediment be removed from behind the dam. That was one of the two goals of this project.
That has been accomplished.
Correct.
So half of the project is you've accomplished. I mean, I think Max's point originally was there was one on East Mountain Road. They wanted to dredge it. The dam was in trouble. So as he explained, they drained it all the way down. There was no concern about the continued flow downstream for that in that project for whatever reason. They took great care to have a low spot where there was some water. They put in aeration, they protect turtles, blah, blah. So the point from the beginning was to clean the entire pond. So this project in essence has morphed from protecting the dam, the structural integrity of the dam, into clearing out the pond, which there's no problem with that. In fact, it's a good thing to clear out the pond. But it was the proposal and the way it was approached was not consistent with other projects that have been proposed in that way.
I'm sorry.
And that's
our application. Well, Beth, you can describe our application.
Yeah, our application is not for mechanical dredging, which is, I believe, what you're describing, Mr. Chairman. We knew we couldn't draw down the dam. Draw down the water level. To do this dredging, we needed to find a way to maintain the water level in the pond, or at least maintain enough water in the pond to make a slurry of the sediment and get that slurry to a dewatering area. It's two entirely different kinds of dredging project. And had we drawn the water down, had we tried to do mechanical dredging in this pond, I can pretty much guarantee we would have significantly compromised the aquatic life in the pond. We would have essentially wiped it out, and we would have made a mess of all the surrounding upland areas, because you would have had to get a machine around the whole circumference of the pond to get the sediment out. Hydraulic dredging, suction dredging allows us to get into the main body of the pond and remove the sediment without that kind of destruction and damage.
Right, I
But
understand.
I want to correct something because I may have misheard, but our initial application to DEC and you was for this entire project. We did not expand the scope of the project post-application. We always imagined it this way.
It's interesting, Jonathan, I have to disagree there, not very politely. I read it 3 times and it was a little ambiguous. It didn't specifically state that the purpose was to clean the entire pond. I didn't think, but I'll take your word for it. That was your intention, you know, that was.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been, I appreciate you taking my word for it because the writing may have not been, anyway, that has
Right.
been our intention.
And I'll take responsibility for the writing not being clear. If it wasn't clear, it was certainly my intent and my recommendation to the Roses that if they were going to remove the sediment from behind the dam, that they clean the entire pond while they were at it, because I don't honestly think it's ever been done.
So, I mean, I think the push here is to has absolutely everything been done? Is there anything else, Beth, that you think could be done? Just any additional measure that could be done as another 2 pairs of suspenders, Jonathan? I'm not being flippant. I mean, I want it would, if the board could be satisfied by some extreme measures. To me, it seems like you've taken some pretty extreme measures here, but to satisfy other members, is there anything else that you could offer?
The only thing that I can think that we can offer is if, and I think it is an unlikely event, but if we do encounter fine sediments in the dredge effluent, we have the ability to capture that in the dewatering area and discharge it right there in the meadow, not back into the pond, so that it is the whatever silt is in the dredge slurry is not being discharged back into the pond. We can do that. We will do that. It is obviously in all of our interest to get this project completed and buttoned up as quickly and efficiently and carefully as possible.
I mean,
I would
my
like to
opinion
jump in.
that-
Is it possible for me to speak?
Certainly.
Am I able to jump in here? I'm the landscape manager at Manitoga, and I just wanted to echo what Beth was just saying. We are the direct recipients of that the Cloudbank pond, the stream, as we call it, the quarry stream, and I didn't see any catastrophic thing that happened. We had a very muddy looking pond and I was concerned, but as Beth said, in 10 days, it really settled down, and I'm not even seeing clay sediment covering rocks or things in our pond, and we have our fish. And I think what I was deathly concerned about, seeing a muddy pond, really has settled out, and I feel okay about things. And I'm very, very happy with the forthcoming conversation and communication with the Roses about what happens at the stream. And I just can't, this new modified action plan really has addressed and over the top, I think, 3 different ways to contain this turbidity should it happen, should they make a mistake and go a little bit over the clay lining. That it seems they have taken care of with this new modified action plan. And what is of most concern to us is abrupt changes in the flow of the water, and maybe not having any flow at all also is very concerning to us. And with installation of this bypass pipe that they have done is really a wonderful thing, I think. And they've gone over and beyond to try to solve some of these problems. I think it was very wonderful to see this new modified plan. And I appreciate this continued communication that we'll have. And if you think that we are not going to be monitoring what happens up in that pond down below, you're wrong. We are there every day looking, and we will not let anything pass. So I just think that we should, I would just like to reiterate what my executive director sent a letter that we would support getting this project going and having it beyond us with all these very, very thoughtful and thorough and due diligence, if I would quote somebody else, plan. And I just wanted to speak about that as from Manitoga.
Thank you, Emily. I don't know. I can't see anything else that I can add to it. Yes, Bob.
I have two things. So I definitely feel, and I think we've already agreed that the monitoring using a turbidity meter, from the baseline and then just kind of continuously during the process is going to be the enabler here. This is going to tell us something more than just visual. It gives us hard data and some numbers that basically we can see. So I think that's the quick indicator that we would have that if there's a breakthrough there. And then the other thing I was going to say, and it's really more for the future, since this was such, a 150-year project in the making here with this clay, if you could document the plans that you have to demonstrate where that clay barrier could be at the risk for the future, for whoever, comes down generations from us, so that they don't have to repeat this, then I would be happy with those two things as my mitigations. So.
Excellent, Bob.
And thank you. That's a great suggestion for us too, to have a good baseline. That's protective for us.
Does anybody else have anything they want to throw in at this point? I would say this is our last shot at it. If not, then can I have a motion to allow the project to proceed with all the things that we just discussed, that Bob just mentioned, the monitoring, the mapping, the emergency dump into the meadow if there's a problem, just a quick brief, we're okay to Max and myself, beginning, middle, and end of day. I vote that I would like a motion to allow them to proceed.
Mark, so move.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Then it's unanimous. There you go.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your very constructive comments. And we look forward to completing this project and getting you the data and the evidence you need that this way of dredging also works and works well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Emily.
Did
Thank you,
a lot
everybody.
of work to come to this point. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you all comfortable with how we expect you to move forward? Do you need to lay out some sort of sequence or before resumption takes place?
I'm sorry, Max, who's that question directed to? The applicant or us?
The Cloudbank applicants and consultants.
No, I think we're very clear on what the board is expecting and what we need to do to move forward and to continue with the project.
Okay, so then we'll hear from you before work starts.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Guys, is Mike there? There's Mike.
Aye.
Just wanted everybody to have a chance to thank Mike face to face as much as that can be for all his years and all his help and everything you guys said in all the emails. Thank you, Mike. I want to say that personally. You've been a mentor and a great help. And thank you
Thank
for
you, Mark. Yeah, I mean, for me, you guys have done a fantastic job since I started myself personally on the Conservation Board. I've been very impressed with the committee, your expertise, but as I said recently as well, your ability to work with applicants and try to come up with something that's a workable plan that's going to also protect the environment, but obviously so that the applicant feels that the board is honestly and due diligent and good faith is trying to come up with a reasonable solution. And I think really you've gone above and beyond to achieve that. So I have all the best feelings about this board the entire time. And I think you're going to do a great job going forward. You know the challenges. Obviously, we're getting more and more of these people who want to, because of the lack of land, buildable land, to try and push up against the environmental controls, but they're there for a reason. We're not trying to be a heavy on anybody. We're just trying to let them know that, there is limitations. We only have 5% of our town as wetlands. We have to protect it. We can't just allow everybody to start building, and then before you know it, we won't have enough and we'll have serious problems. Our terrain and everything is such. So, I think you're moving in a terrific direction towards it. I mean, I don't know if Judy Farrell's on or not. Judy, you on?
Judy, I think you may be muted. Excuse me. No good.
Okay. Well, Judy expressed an interest. If she's just hearing, she can hear me, but and whether her and the board concur that she should go on with it, I think she can go on and do some great things. She's done in 2 years on the board. She's done a fantastic job. There obviously will be, there's some great people running for office, and if I think the town moves and moves them forward, they have excellent skills, better skills than me by far, especially on computers and everything. So, I really think I see a lot of positives going forward. So I'm leaving at a good time. Thankfully, I'm not leaving going, wow, things are really bad. So, thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mike. Judy, I see you have your hand raised. I know you're trying to get in. It doesn't seem like the audio is working. We can't hear you.
Yeah, she's not muted, but it's not working.
Yeah. I had a lot of trouble initially with Zoom as well, but only with this meeting. For some reason, the audio sometimes.
Your mute symbol is on. Oh, it just went off. Still no good. Bummer.
Judy, check your volume level. Sometimes Zoom automatically sets my volume to 0.
Oh.
And even though my mute, it does not appear to be on, nobody can hear me.
Or the administrator did it for you.
Well, I guess if Judy keeps trying, can we talk about something else just very briefly? Everybody's thoughts on going back to in-person meetings? Shall I express mine first? My opinion is I am enjoying the way the meetings are going just like this. I see no need to go back in person. I actually have better access to the maps and data on my big screen, and I can blow things up and I can look at things. We're not fumbling at the desk with the paper, and we're not wasting paper, and et cetera, et cetera. I think we've been accomplishing what we need to accomplish quite well, and it's admittedly quite a convenience to be able to do it from our homes. So as long as we are not forced to go back into in-person meetings, my opinion would be continue as long as we possibly can, like this.
I'm good with that too. I think right now.
I agree.
Safe and sorry.
I agree. It's working well.
I think it's fine unless we find that residents are feeling like they're not, so I'd like to get some feedback from residents who are coming before the board, whether this is somehow not giving them their moment in front of the board. you know, that they crave, you know, a face-to-face interaction.
Yep. Bob?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think this has been very effective. I mean, obviously I'm on video meetings all day and all night. So for work normally, so, you know, I'm very used to it. But, you know, I mean, residents may feel a little bit different about it, but, you know, I mean, I would say that, you know, maybe we could have maybe one meeting a quarter or something like that in person. Maybe that might be an alternative, but then again, you know, it depends on which residents are coming to that meeting. But I think this has been effective personally.
All right, cool.
Just, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Many of the boards have resumed meeting in person, so I think, you know, perhaps a quarterly meeting, as Bob suggested, might work for the public to be able to participate if they wanted to attend. If that's appropriate.
Mhm.
But it's up to the board really the town has resumed in person, and the Recreation Commission has resumed in-person meetings.
Very good.
It's a pretty spiffy room now in that town hall.
Yeah, yes, you're welcome to visit, of course.
All right, then that we should do. All right, so for that, that is all I have, everybody. I don't know if, unless anybody else has something else, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I second, but before we go anywhere, I just want to say to Mike, thank you so much. You've been a great mentor to me. And I thank you for your bravery and your kind heart and your commitment to this community. Good luck in your new adventures.
Thank you so much, MJ. That's really nice of you to say that. Thank you.
We will miss you.
We will miss you, Mike.
We will
Thank
really
you.
will.
I'm gonna miss every single one of you.
And since it's a Zoom meeting, you could join anyway. So
Yeah, that's it. Good luck, Judy. If you take this over, you got a terrific group here. You're gonna do great.
Thanks, Mike. I learned so much from you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great serving with you.
We all did.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I guess the meeting is adjourned. I had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
There you go. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.